In this video, we're going to talk about cob, which is a really amazing, sustainable, healthy, affordable, and super durable building material. We've explored several different types of buildings and housing options on our channel, from tiny houses to off-grid cabins to earth ships and yurts, and those are all built with a wide variety of different building materials. But one material that we haven't explored much is cob, and the more we learn about it, the more we see its amazing potential. The main ingredients for making cob are clay, sand, and straw. So that means that the materials for your walls can cost you almost nothing, while also having a really low environmental impact. Cob walls also provide an excellent thermal mass, and if it's built to passive solar principles, it can be extremely efficient and cost very little to heat. The walls can store energy from the sun to keep you warm in the winter, while also remaining cool during summer months. For us, one of the most interesting things about cob buildings is that, unlike conventional homes, cob houses are built almost entirely with natural, clean, non-toxic materials, which makes them a really good, healthy, alternative building option. It can be used to create extremely strong structures, and in fact, the oldest cob house still standing is thought to be around 10,000 years old. Cob walls are also termite-proof, fireproof, and I can go on and on about all the benefits, but we're going to go meet up with Bryce, a third-generation cob builder, who's going to tell us a little bit more about his experience building with cob and why he thinks it's the very best building material.
Cob is a mixture of sand, clay, and straw typically, but cob is a general term, but it's just basically earth building, and it pertains to a type of earth building that is predominant in England and Wales and now North America. There are many other types of earth building that are essentially the same thing, like adobe, or a lot of African homes are the same materials but different names. For me, there's no comparison in working with natural materials versus manufactured materials. You just have a lot greater connection to the material that you're working with. You know, you didn't just go to the hardware store and pick something up off the shelf, and who knows where it came from, who knows what the logging practices were like, who knows what the manufacturing practices were like. Not to say that those things can't be good, but a lot of the time they also involve a pretty high environmental footprint. And natural building is about just like using the materials that are available right where you are. And I really love that aspect of it. So cob is usually, you're searching for a ratio of 3 parts sand, 1 part clay, and 1 part straw, depending on what you're using it for. You can usually find a similar ratio to that within most soils, but if you're working with pure materials, it's 3 sand, 1 clay, 1 straw. Cob is a really great material because it's very sculptural. It's very fluid. You can turn it into anything you want, essentially, and it's also built up in a way that it becomes one monolithic material. So that gives it a lot of strength. So you can use it for all sorts of different structural elements. And because you can shape it into any form, you can make curvilinear shapes, which are a lot stronger than rectilinear. So that gives it a lot of different capabilities as well. But you can definitely use it to support roof loads, snow loads. You can make arches, you can make, round windows, you can make arched doorways. So you add the straw because it acts as tensile strength. So what that means is it basically acts as a fiber that knits together inside the cob. So you have all this straw in here, and when you mix it in with other cob, all that straw gets knit together and integrates it into a web. And so that creates a web within the wall, which gives it a ton of strength, keeps it from pulling apart. You can tell it's a good batch if it rolls up into a nice log like this, and there's no big cracks, there's no obvious sand in it, and you can pull a big hunk off of it and it holds together. You got a good amount of straw in there. Oh yeah, it's a nice cob. A lot of people think that cob and straw, how will they withstand the weather? But there's lots of earthen buildings all around the world that have withstood, way worse weather than a lot of people are subject to here. And there's an old saying in English that goes, if a house has a good hat and a good pair of boots, it'll last forever, which means if they have a good roof and a good foundation and they stay in good condition, then the rest of the building should be fine. And with conventional buildings these days, that's not true because a lot of the materials will degrade. You know, it's really low quality lumber. A lot of things give reasons for newer buildings to fall apart quicker, whereas old materials like cob, which is super durable, once it's dry, stays dry, it'll last indefinitely. It's challenging to do natural building because the building world is very rigid, trying to pursue this one avenue of building, which is typically stick frame structures with lots of, you know, materials from all over the place and manufactured goods, and requires a lot of different trades and a very complex infrastructure to produce housing. And yeah, natural building is just the opposite of that. It's so freeform, it's so creative, and so that is a real challenge for that industry and building inspectors and everyone, because no one's used to thinking that way anymore. Seeing what the conventional building industry was doing in North America, there was some people who wanted to bring back kind of that building with the earth, building with really simple materials, really accessible materials, something that you didn't have to go to the hardware store for, or something that you didn't need all that infrastructure to produce, something that was very creative. And so a big part of why cob came back and is flourishing again is because of the Cob Cottage Company, which is based out of Oregon. They've really been pushing to bring it back, and then from there, you know, it just took off. You know, I'm a third generation cobber, learning from someone who learned from them, and now I'm teaching more people how to do natural building and why it's important. I got into natural building 9 years ago now. I was 17 and wanted to do all sorts of different things, and was looking at different ways of how my life and a lot of people's lives affect a lot of other people's lives, and, you know, the environment's life. And so I was looking at, you know, the most basic things like shelter, food, water, all those things, like how do you produce that without causing harm. And so that led me to natural building, which led me to finding a 3-week-long workshop on Main Island with Cobworks. Pat Hannaberry was leading the workshop. Spent 3 weeks, you know, sculpting a house, playing in the mud, and just learned so much from that experience beyond just how to build something. But it also gave me a lot of confidence to realize that, you know, you could do so much with so little. So from there, I ended up living with Pat on Maine for about 3 years on and off, and just learned a ton. I then went on and traveled, and I visited a lot of different natural builders all over the West Coast just to see how different people were doing things differently, and so gained a ton of experience through that. From there, yeah, I just decided I wanted to go on and continue it on and continue the teaching, especially really inspires me to help people escape the idea that we have to be set in this one way of doing things that's going down a really bad path in my mind, and causes a lot of harm. So yeah, I started my own natural building business and built a straw bale house on Pender Island, and have done a lot of other small projects, a lot of plaster work. Plastering with earth is also a very old tradition, so natural building can fit into a lot of different settings. Cob you can use in different renovations, or things like light clay or straw bale, or, you know, all sorts of things. So I also love natural building because it's so hands-on, especially cob. Like, you're just, every inch of that wall has been touched by someone's hands, by someone's feet, by, you know, there's just so much love and energy put into the creation of it.
If you want to see more videos about alternative buildings, alternative housing options, check out our playlists. There's tons of great content there. Please subscribe to our channel. We post a new video every single week. And to learn a bit more about what Bryce is doing, you can check out the link in the description of this video.